Good afternoon, almost. Um, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what's wrong with my laptop, but it actually took me, well, 9 minutes to start class. So that's something for the repairman. But not sure if you can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am, we can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, good. And can you see me?
We cannot see you.
Um, okay. Let me do this one. Just a second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for being here. I know it's an extra class. It's intended to make up for the one we missed. And what we wanted to do today was finish our discussion on motivation, where we had begun last class, and talk about emotion as well, and sort of explore the relationship between the two, which includes an exploration of stress as a separate factor that also affects us. And stress is related very much to emotions, and emotions are related very much to motivation, and stress is also hence also related to motivation. So think of it as sort of an umbrella that we're talking about. So in our last class we talked about Maslow, and we talked about Deci and Ryan and self-determination theory, and how, or rather what is the role of autonomy in basically uh, promoting the setting of mastery goals, which according to Deci and Ryan are very adaptive goals, and mastery goals are related to the accomplishment of a certain level of competence, right? So, for example, if you're in a chemistry class and instead of having like, monthly tests and then a midterm exam and a final exam, instead of that, if what you had was every class you got worksheets that you could choose to practice, which were not compulsory, but you continue to practice those, because in your mind, beyond the exam and beyond performance on those tests, what you really wanted to do was master the concepts that you're being taught. And so because you have this mastery goal, and because the worksheets are up to you whether you use them or not, so you have a certain level of autonomy, right? And so you can then make that decision to set as a mastery goal, to better your understanding, your competence of chemistry. And so you would start choosing to work on those worksheets, and possibly, most likely, you would also start consulting other textbooks. You would start maybe having appointments with the teacher. You would do all of this voluntarily, of your own accord, because you want to achieve that mastery goal. And that is why mastery goals are so adaptive and are so much related to achievement goals. Now, achievement goals are your goals that you set to accomplish successfully a particular task, right? So you want to be first in the relay race. That's an achievement goal. It's a very specific task you want to accomplish, right? And it's obviously dependent on your competence. If you're a good runner, you'll set that achievement goal for yourself. And so you do work towards that. The difference is that in a mastery goal, because it's flexible and adaptive, it's not task specific, it's competence based, right? It's not about let me get this medal, it's about let me learn and master this particular area. So that's the sort of, if you want to differentiate between the two, that's how you can clearly differentiate. A mastery goal is contingent on your competence, whereas an achievement goal is contingent on the completion of a particular task. Okay. um, the second thing, and we have this need, by the way, we have this need to have these goals, and we have this need to have um, this sense of accomplishment, and this is where motivation comes in, right? Because if you are not very motivated beyond the accomplishment of a task, beyond coming first in that race, then once the task is accomplished, the motivation to pursue it further may end, right? Unless, of course, you say you want to now, because you came first, you want to say, okay, fine, I want to become better. Or maybe you didn't achieve that goal and you say, okay, I want to, क्या कहते हैं, I want to master this art of running. I want to become a faster runner, so on and so forth. And so there's that, right? Now, what happens is that when you are trying to achieve a particular goal, you're or working towards the accomplishment of a competence, which would be a mastery goal, your entire sort of system, mental and physiological, is very much involved in the achievement of that goal. Okay. And so, what's essentially happening is that, and remember this for later when we start talking about stress, there is a particular level of arousal, physiological arousal. Um, and we always seek to have that optimal level. Okay? And this is where stress comes in the picture, which is why there are certain, remember I told you, in certain situations, too much stress prevents you from actually doing your best, such as when you're too stressed out in an exam, you can't really do it as effectively as if as you were, ugh, you can't do it as effectively unless you have that optimal level of stress, right? Um, and this is why it's not about just your physiological needs being satisfied, right? Your behaviors are not only driven by the satisfaction of your need for food or water. Okay? We as humans are sort of predisposed to look at our environment, and we actively seek out stimulus or stimuli that increase that sense of arousal within us. Okay. And that is then what causes the motivations to occur for different sorts of tasks beyond like eating a meal or drinking a glass of water. Right? And for example, better example of this also is, sometimes you may start, let's go with the chemistry example. So you do all these formative assessments in the sense that आप worksheets complete करते हैं, you set up appointments with your teacher, whatever, and at the end of the year, your course is completed, and you get like an A plus, right? Now, obviously, this reflects also that you have mastered this subject to that particular grade level. ठीक है, 10th grade में हो आप, तो आपने 10th grade का chemistry level complete competence है आपका उसमें. But you want more, right? You want to learn more. You are so interested in the subject that you start doing some study of it on your own, even if it's not offered at your school anymore, even if you don't take it for the exam purpose, right? And you start studying it and exploring it on your own. That is an example of how the environment provides stimuli that causes a certain state of arousal, which then motivates your behavior of looking for external sources, right? But it all comes down to that mastery goal. I want to master this subject. See? Now, this also explains why achievement goals can be kind of one off. Once you've achieved that goal, what's next? To figure out that what's next, you once again look to the environment for more stimuli. So once you've won that race and you've come first in that race, your goal has been achieved, you're going to look to the next challenge, right? Maybe this was a 500-meter dash, and you say, now I'm going to do a 1,000-meter dash. So you up the level of challenge. Again, because there is a sense of arousal which drives you towards certain behaviors. Okay? And like I said, there is this optimal level. And this is based on what's called the Yerkes-Dodson law. And it basically says exactly what we've been talking about with the exam example. Okay, there is a certain point beyond which your arousal state, which we will refer to as stress, becomes a roadblock or a hindrance in your efficacy and your effectiveness rather than supporting your efficacy or effectiveness. And basically, what Yerkes-Dodson says is that there is an optimal level of arousal. If we exceed that, it is going to affect our performance. And this is not something, it's not like it's a 10, right? That if you are constantly at this arousal level of 10, no matter what the task is, you'll be able to do it because you're in that optimal arousal. No. According to Yerkes-Dodson, the level of arousal you experience, physiological arousal, is related to the difficulty of the task. So for every task, there is a particular optimal level of arousal, which is contingent on how difficult is that task to do, right? So if you know, for example, there's a very difficult exam you have to give, it is highly likely that you're going to be very stressed about it, right? And now compare that to a very simple exam that you know you're going to give. You're going to have 1 hour and you have to answer 10 MCQs, and you know it's open book or whatever. You know it's going to be easy, right? Because you have about 5-10 minutes for every multiple choice question. You know it's going to be easy. You're not going to be super stressed about it, right? So obviously, what is optimal in both of these situations is different. Are you following this so far? Okay. And because that level of arousal affects your performance on particular tasks, remember, if it's more than optimal, it's harder for you to complete the task, harder for you to perform, right? Right? And so you have to understand that the nature of the task is related to essentially your level of stress. And the more difficult a task is, um, you may experience higher levels of stress. And so the optimal arousal level is different. Okay. Um, Depending, again, I'll repeat this, on the difficulty of the task. And this entire thing is called arousal theory, whereby our motivation is guided by how stimulated we are or what it is in the environment that is stimulating us, both things. Okay. So coming back to mastery, autonomy, achievement, all of that, at the source of these is this realization that human beings are driven by two core needs. Okay, the need for affiliation, meaning the need to belong, and the need for achievement, the need to achieve. Okay, and so I'll explain why this is related to what I was talking about, mastery goals and achievement goals. Obviously, the need to achieve can be directly understood in relation to our human need for achievement. Sorry, achievement goals can be directly understood through our human need for achievement, whereas when we talk about mastery goals, remember that when you become extremely competent at something, what it also brings for you is a certain level of social acceptability, a certain level of, let's call it, for lack of a better word, respect, certain sense of belonging. Okay. When that happens, that is a relationship that you can draw between mastery goals and the need for affiliation or the need for belonging. Now, obviously, that is not the only way to satisfy the need for affiliation. And secondly, this need to belong, it looks different for different people. So for someone who's very introverted, that need for belonging does not mean that they are friends with everybody who lives on their street, but it does mean that they will need at least one or two close relationships, close friendships, close family relationships to fall back on, right? To feel connected to feel like they belong. And so, again, it is a very basic human need. Have you heard this? Man is a social animal. Have you ever heard that? That's what I'm talking about. Okay. We have this need for connection. How much of that connection, or how deep, or let's say how many of those deep connections we have, that is something that varies depending on personality, depending on environmental factors. But when we feel like we have been rejected, or we have been excluded, right? Think about bullying, for example. When you are bullied, you experience a sense of exclusion, right? And so that sense of exclusion for human beings is actually something that is related to a sensation of physical pain. So, in a lot of these like teenage rom-coms, you see when the breakup happens, both people are crying and sobbing and essentially in a great deal of pain, right? And the science actually supports that when you feel rejected, the parts of your brain that are connected to experiencing physical pain may get activated. Okay. Now, you all have been saying things in the chat. Didn't Freud say that? Say what? What is a stronger driving force, achievement goal or mastery goal? This is a very good question, and it is related to intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Mastery goals में motivation is internal, right? It's not about मेरा exam में A आ जाएगा, right? So it's very internal. It's not about someone externally incentivizing that road towards achieving that competence. But in achievement goals, extrinsic motivation can come into play. You want to win the first prize in a race because you're going to get a reward also of 10,000 rupees, right? So achievement goals are more clearly linkable to external motivation, but, and this is not for your course, but I'm telling you this for your interest, okay, achievement goals are also linked to a sense. So this is something that leads to have you heard that phrase, overachievers, right? People who basically ace everything and do everything, and they do it really well, and they continue to like set the bar higher for themselves, and they grow and they grow and they grow, and they definitely don't teach freshman courses in psychology. But actually, I'm just joking. I love teaching you guys. I look forward to it. I live for it. But basically, and while I tell you this, I should tell you I have been described as an overachiever, so I think I'm trying to distance myself from that label. Basically, people who are overachievers set achievement goals for themselves, but also set mastery goals for themselves. Okay, so an example for you could be that my achievement goal was I want to get a master's degree. Okay, that's my achievement goal. This is something I want to check the box on. But the mastery goal is I want to use that degree to understand how to support adolescents. So I want to explore every aspect of everything that is presented to me in the course of my completion of the degree. Okay? So that is the relationship also between achievement goals and mastery goals. So I hope that's a little more clear to you. Now I want to move on to, let's see what's next. Great question. No, I was looking at the chat. Next up, we're talking about motivation. Sorry. Again, I'm not sure what Freud said, but if he said it, I don't really care. Why do we turn to stress for motivation if it can be harmful, if it exceeds optimal stress? I'm asking the context of evolution, and why have we not adapted to stress if it's always present in achieving goals? The reason that stress has not been eliminated from our responses is because stress very much helps us survive. Okay, but just like any other part of your brain, if the environment exerts too much on you, too much pressure on you, and related, your self-regulation capacity is lacking in some way, then stress becomes maladaptive. But the good news is that you can learn self-regulation, right? So we know, and this is where stress is complicated, because stress is psychological and physiological, right? When you get stressed out, there are physical manifestations of that stress. You can't sleep, you lose your appetite, correct? So इसकी वजह से you can't just say कि stress होना ही नहीं चाहिए. You have to experience stress, and the way to regulate stress is where the environment plays a massive role, because you can learn strategies to regulate your stress level. to avoid triggers for stress, etc. And that, at the end of the day, is the human capacity also for self-reflection and learning, right? Which is so much more evolved than any other animate species that we are aware of. That's always been the differentiating factor, which is why you have an entire field of animal psychology which is different, related, but different. Okay. Um, Man is a selfish animal. How is performance goals different from achievement goals and mastery goals? Um, Performance goals are not exactly completely separate. So I wouldn't say that you distinguish them completely. They are very much, to my mind, a type of achievement goal. But the relationship to mastery goals also comes in because performance refers to the competence that you possess in a particular area as well. So again, the overlaps are present. Just like I told you about achievement and mastery, same way you can consider performance in relationship to mastery goals and in relationship to achievement goals. I will have to be honest, look it up for you because I have forgotten a little bit about the exact definition of performance goals. But if you have it with you, tell me. I'm happy to explain. Ali, go ahead.
My concern was कि last class में आपने मैं ये बताया था कि basically Destiny Ryan की जो theory थी about motivation was कि that human being जब उनको autonomy मिलती है तो मतलब basically तब उनको मजा आता है ठीक है then they are happy तो there were these goals that were set for us by others एक goals होते हैं जो others set करते हैं and they are then this goals जो हम खुद अपने लिए सेट करते हैं जो हमारा टारगेट होता है जिनको हमने अचीव करना होता है जिसको हमने एक्सेल करना होता है वो हम खुद करते हैं जिसमें हमारे पास ऑटोनॉमी आती है एंड देन जो दूसरे गोल्स होते हैं जो दूसरे करते हैं तो मैं बेसिकली इसके ऊपर डिस्टिंक्शन क्रिएट करना चाह रहा था बिटवीन द गोल्स तो मुझे इन लास्ट क्लास में मुझे ऐसा लगा था कि जैसे परफॉर्मेंस गोल होते हैं वो होते हैं जो दूसरे हम पे सेट करते हैं और अचीवमेंट गोल्स होते हैं जो हम खुद सेट करते हैं मुझे इस तरह लग रहा था तो वो कंफ्यूजन है थोड़ी सी उसके मामले में
Okay. Give me 1 second. I have an article that clearly explains this. I'm going to open it up and refer to it. Mastery goals are associated with more positive emotional experiences than performance goals, which is related to this definition of performance goals. Performance goals are driven by the need to prove your competence to other people. Okay, so this achievement goal of winning a race, if you wanted to win the race, remember what I said about the need for affiliation, belonging, and social acceptance, right? So consider performance goals in that context. आप अपने खुद के लिए नहीं करते हैं वो, you're driven by this internal need, आपकी खुद की need होती है for being seen as competent and worthy by other people. Okay, so in a sense, it's not like you are doing it for your own improvement. It's not a self-improvement goal the way a mastery goal is. It is to satisfy your need for affiliation. Does that clarify this for you? Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Now I ask you this question. What are emotions? Anyone?
Emotions are our reaction or response to particular stimuli.
Reaction or response, state of feelings, our feelings. Okay, yes. Question. You said reaction. Reaction, response, feeling. When you are having a reaction, response, feeling, what does it look like? Okay, make it easier for you. Um, Happy is a feeling, yes. It's a reaction, yes. It's a response, yes. When you're happy, what does that look like? You smile, so there's a physical manifestation, right? What else happens when you're happy? What does a good mood look like? You feel an internal warmth, you can jump around. What else? Don't get into the complications of subjective and this and that. I'm asking you a really simple question. What does happy feel like and look like for you? I know we live in a pandemic and it's probably been a long time since you felt happy, but try to remember that. Internal satisfaction, positive, no. What does happy look like to you? Take a minute, close your eyes, and think about what is happy. Hopefully, you won't all be depressed after this class. Excitement, food, no stress. All right, I'm going to give you a sample answer of what being sad looks like so you can maybe think through what happy looks like. Okay? Um, when I am sad, I feel physically slowed down, right? So I feel physically lethargic. So that expression, having a weight on your mind, becomes true for me. I may be hypersensitive, so things that people say may affect me very deeply, and I may feel very hurt more than I would when I am not sad. I also do not really talk as much. I may also, when I speak, have a very sort of monotone, monosyllabic experience. I don't smile. I don't move. That's what sad looks like and feels like. Yes? Now, in this exactly articulate way, instead of using one word, think about what does happy look like. Laiba,
Yeah, so for me, happiness is look like I feel energized. I feel like you know, like running. Sometimes I feel like I want to shout or something like that. Also, I when I am happy, I feel like doing like a lot of fun with the people, and I feel like to be interacted with my surrounding more. And yeah, so and also um when I am happy, I feel like to be in like in natural in a natural place where only me and greenery, because I'm kind of a nature lover. So when I feel happy, so I feel like इसको boost करने के लिए natural जगह पे रहना चाहिए. So usually I go there like beach or something.
okay, great. Very good. So, what you've described is a physical state of feeling more energized, right? Your body has more energy. Second thing you've described is wanting to connect with people and looking at your environment and looking at things and basically creating more happiness or more spaces of joy, which is a psychological connection. Yes? So,
Yeah. Right.
at the end of the day, your emotion consists of, and of course you mentioned that you feel like shouting and you want to like move around, etc. and you think about going and connecting to nature, right? So what is happening is that you are experiencing physiological or bodily arousal, right? Where everything is energized. You are also manifesting or showing what we call expressive behaviors like laughing or shouting or whatever. You are also expressing or experiencing, sorry, consciously thoughts of those of that happiness, right? I'm so happy right now. I want to go. I want to go to the beach. I want to take a walk, etc. So what I'm trying to tell you is that emotion comprises of these three things. You experience a physical change, and up here in your mind, in your mental life, you start, the brain starts to work, your motor, again, this is related to the bodily arousal, but is related also to the psychological state, where your motor cortex is activated, your muscles are activated, you start smiling, you start frowning. Yes, that's that's what your expressive behaviors are. Okay, so if bodily, you have what we call flat affect. Sorry, if behaviorally you have flat affect. Flat affect means that in your voice and in your actions, there's no emotion. That's flat affect. Affect with an A is a psychological tone for when we are doing research or we're discussing emotion. As it is expressed, we use affect. Okay. But you don't need to remember that. It's fine. Essentially, emotion is not just something that exists in the mental life of a person. Emotion is something that is very much part of your human experience, right? It's part of, in a nutshell, being human, because when you feel an emotion, you don't just feel it as an intangible component of, your soul. When you feel an emotion, you feel it in your body, you live it through your behavior, and you also experience it very consciously in your cognition. Okay. Now the question becomes, if your body experience of an emotion is so important to knowing that you're feeling that emotion, what comes first? Do you have the physiological experience first? Right? Does the body get aroused first, or does the mind first experience that emotion and then communicate to the rest of the body that now you need to come into this state of, let's say, energy because this person is happy? Right? And it's a confusing question. It's like chicken and egg almost, right? What comes first? Because they're so interrelated. How are you supposed to know? Good news is our friend William James did a lot of study on this, and William James said, we first have a body experience of emotion and then we feel it. Now, why do you think William James said this? Remember, William James was the opposite of Wilhelm Wundt, who said, I'm going to think about everything that happens through the mental inner state, whereas James said, we are biologically adaptive creatures, right? So obviously, James wanted to focus on the biology of it, right? And so he said, nahi, pehle body aroused hota hai, and yes, Haya, you're right. Then you start to feel it in your mind. Okay. Now, that was a very predominant view until Canon Bard came around and they said, well, emotion and arousal happened simultaneously at the same time. Okay. Which also implies that without bodily arousal, you can't feel an emotion. Now, the interesting thing is that experiments that have been done with people who have had injuries that have cut off or have disrupted the connection between the, let's say, felt physical sensations of an emotion or anything rather, between that and the brain. Remember, there's what connects the brain to the rest of our body, which enables us to move and do things. Yes, exactly. So when there has been damage to the spinal cord, obviously motor function is disrupted, right? So experiments that have been, or research that has been done with people who have a damaged spinal cord, one of them showed that they all kind of showed that people don't feel emotion with that same physical intensity as before. So they, on a cerebral level, will recognize anger as anger, but the experience of the anger is different. It doesn't feel as angry as anger used to feel. Does that sit with you a little bit? So what you're seeing is that the physiology or the body is directly related to that emotional mind experience, basically, right? Or the psychological state of a feeling and how you feel that feeling, basically, is connected to your bodily arousal. Okay. Now, the problem is that with Canon Bard saying कि जी ये same time पे होता है, we don't actually, that's not really how, because we've all had experiences where first we experience it in the body and suddenly it registers in the mind, or we understand the information, we know the information, but we're kind of like shocked by the information, and so it takes time for that physical arousal to happen. Has that ever happened to you? Okay. When I got into grad school, I remember that I was looking at the acceptance letter, and I just kept reading it, and I just sat there in silence alone at 2 in the morning, and I just kept reading this acceptance letter, which was like, you know, the dream of like 35 years finally came true, and I had no reaction physically. I just kept sitting and I just kept reading it, right? And once it registered here, then, you know, like there was a dance throughout the house and the dog was woken up, and like there was lots of shouting to myself, even though I was alone. But I was just so happy about it, right? So what I'm trying to explain through this is that pehle yahan pe hua, uske baad in the rest of the body was manifested. So sometimes that happens, there's a delay. And the delay can also work in the opposite direction. You see something, you get scared, right? तो आप पहले झटका मारते हो, उसके बाद you register that you got scared, correct? So that means they do not happen simultaneously. Okay, emotion and psychological experience and the physiological experience. Okay, so then finally, these two people called Schachter and Singer, I think they were German. They came up with what is called the two-factor theory. And yes, Haya, that is fight or flight. It's actually fight, flight, or freeze. So you don't freeze in a flight or fight response. It's flight, fight, or freeze. The three elements. Freeze was added later. So coming back to this theory, two-factor theory, they said that without physiological arousal and a cognitive label for an emotion, you do not have an emotion. So for you to feel happiness, you must know that this is happiness you're feeling. A, and B, your body must have some reaction to that experience of emotion. So दो चीजें साथ साथ होती हैं. The important thing is they're talking about labeling. Okay? And this is where you want to start thinking about culture. There are emotional experiences that do not have words in particular languages, but do have words in particular languages. Right? And again, the interpretation of it depends on which one is your native language. Right? So when you say anxiety in English, consider, is it a direct can it be directly translated into ghabrahat or pareshani? And do either of those two words fully encompass what anxiety means? Or is Your Urdu is amazing. I did not know this word. Thank you. What is this word? Tell us about it. Istarab?
Istirab, it means anxiety
Like a direct
or
translation?
anxious feeling. वही इसी जुमरे में आता है मुझे इतनी भी कोई आप थोड़ा ज्यादा समझ रही इतनी फिलोसॉफिकल अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं है इसकी बट मैं इसको इसी तरह लेता हूँ.
Interesting. Okay.
इस्तराब का मतलब ये होता है कि हिलना, ठीक है. जैसे मरकरी हिलता है ना, उसका टेम्परेचर आगे पीछे होता है, तो इसका मतलब ये होता है इस्तराब.
So
मतलब
what is
बेचैनी में बंदा आगे पीछे हिलता रहता है, और इसी तरह इस्तराब का होता है ना. तो ये काफ़ी इस्तेमाल किया जाता है शायरी वगैरह में कि आप जो है ना, आप एक जगह पे नहीं होते. जब आपको मतलब लव होता है या इश्क होता है कि आप एक जगह पे नहीं रह सकते, तो वो इस्तराब की एक स्टेट होती है, फीलिंग होती है.
That's such a good explanation. Thank you both. I learned something new today. This is very cool. So so what I'm getting from this is istirab refers to a physical expression of anxiety. Pareshani refers to the mental experience. You're worried. That's why you're anxious. Ghabrahat is related to apprehension or fear, which is also part of anxiety because anxiety is directly related to uncertainty about the future. Yes? And so we don't have a word that directly relates to that anxiety experience in Urdu. Yes or no? No. So imagine this, and this is also meant to remind you of our conversation in our 2 classes ago about linguistic relativism and linguistic determinism. Linguistic determinism, just to remind you, says that if you don't know the word for something, you don't think about it. Okay, and we said that's not true. So if you ask someone, like ये psychological practice में therapy में बहुत होता है. If you're speaking with people from different cultures, you have to pay attention to what particular words in their language mean in terms of connotations rather than actual word, right? So if I am doing a clinic with patients from an Urdu speaking community who don't speak English, who don't know what this word of anxiety is, who have never come across it, and I ask them कि आपके दिन में क्या होता है, आपको क्या महसूस होता है, और वो कहते हैं परेशानी. I know that's related to anxiety, so I have to explore further, but it's not a direct translation. Okay. However, the label corresponds to the experience of the person, right? So just because someone is describing or labeling something imperfectly, they're still labeling it, which means they still recognize and acknowledge that experience of it that is happening in their body is now also connected to the mental state. And that is the nutshell or the essence of two-factor theory. कि दोनों चीजें important होती हैं. You have to recognize in consciousness, this is what I'm feeling. And you will have also a physiological arousal of it. So it's two things together. And they did this experiment. They injected a bunch of college-aged men with epinephrine, and they produced this experimental setting where these men who had been injected with epinephrine is a drug that kind of raises all of your perceptual capacity. So you're kind of very hyped out and very responsive, very hyper responsive to any stimuli. And then they put these guys who were injected with epinephrine in a room where they had, I think it was a woman come in who was like really talkative and really euphoric and really happy. But the men reported no change in their emotional state. Okay. If they had been injected with epinephrine and not been told कि आपको हमने ये injection दिया, अब आपको ये experience होगा, it's possible they may have reported a feeling of an emotion, but they didn't because they knew कि उनके physiological जो भी arousal हो रहा है, it's coming from the injection, it's not coming from their mind. So they did not label the emotion, which is why Schachter and Singer say that it is both. Without the label, you don't have the emotion. Right? It might be possible to misattribute arousal to an emotional experience. Yes, absolutely. And also in the reverse. But it's okay, because to make errors is to be human, right? And one example of the misattribution is that, if some people, when they're actually very sad, express it through anger, misattribution. Some people don't like to feel sad, so they feel angry instead. So that's the power of the label. And that's why Shakta and Singer's theory makes sense. But remember Canon Bard saying it happens at the same time? Canon Bard says physiological emotion and mental emotion, let's simplify, happen at the same time. Zajong, Lido, and Lazarus said, not all of our emotions are the product of how we're understanding our physiological arousal. Okay? Some emotions travel a higher road and some emotions travel a low road. So complex emotions like envy or, sorry, greed, hatred, love, these are complex emotions. Okay? They have many related layers, etc. Those complex emotions travel a high road, meaning that the stimulus that triggers your brain into that physiological arousal goes by way of your hypothalamus, which means कि आपके hypothalamus में वो experience पहले deconstruct होता है, understand होता है, उसके बाद कुछ उसके साथ होता है, उसके बाद उसका physiological arousal होता है, उसके बाद उसकी labeling होती है. But जो low road emotions होते हैं, very basic things, right? Like your most primal, I like this, I don't like this, let's say this makes me happy, this makes me sad. Very, very basic, the most essential human emotions. इस तरह अगर आप सोच लें, तो वो आपके emotions low road travel करते हैं. तो वो आपके primal, using the word primal implies के they just go straight to the amygdala. So they are not really deconstructed. They're just instinctive almost, right? They're low road emotions. So according to these two, our emotions come from partially internal coding, जैसे हमारे basic likes and dislikes and fears are concerned. It's a neural shortcut basically. Whereas the high road emotions that we kind of analyze and construct and label before we tell our body how to respond, these high road emotions involve conscious thinking, right? So essentially what they're saying is some of our emotions are not consciously thought out and labeled, and this contradicts what Shafta and Singer said. But they're also saying that there are emotions that we can only feel when we consciously understand, label, interpret them, and then our body responds to it. Because at the end of the day, remember, emotion is your bodily response, your mental state, and your behavior that expresses the emotion, right? तीन चीजें साथ साथ होती हैं. So this is what these three researchers have said, and obviously this approach makes more sense because it's more, it answers the unanswered question that Shakta and Singer raised, which is that what happens when we instinctively have certain responses, right? When you're in a car with, let's say you're in a taxi in a foreign city, and the taxi starts driving on deserted roads, and you immediately feel fearful. Hota hai. If it ever happens to you, by the way, you should get out of the cab. But it happens, right? And that instinctive response, you're not like sitting and thinking, oh, what is this? Acha, I am feeling fear. No, it just happens. And these three researchers, the John, kya naam the inke French, Zajon, Ledoux, and Lazarus, what they say is that we have the capacity to just feel these things without thinking them through, because when we are faced with the environment, we are appraising the environment constantly, meaning we are evaluating the environment and figuring out what is there to be fearful of. And that is why emotions are adaptive. Okay. And the way we interpret the environment or the stimulus, the events in the environment as harmless or dangerous is related to how we experience the emotions, right? So if you hear a loud sound in the night and you think that somebody has broken into your house, your emotional response is very different as opposed to when you hear a loud sound and you know कि आपका fridge 10वीं दफा बंद हो रहा है, right? So you know that there's a difference between the two and your responses are completely different. So again, they're bringing in the environment as well. All right. There is a, I'm gonna relate it to the high road and low road emotions. There's something called your basic emotions, which this woman named Carol, I think it was a woman actually, I might be wrong. Actually, I don't know about their gender. Izzard isolated 10 basic emotions. This is very easy to understand. The basic emotions, she said, that we all experience them, and all other emotions are combination of these basics. Okay, so joy, interest, excitement, surprise, sadness, anger, fear, and guilt, and shame, and contempt, which means to look down on someone. We have pretty much all of these when we're born. And as we get older, all of the emotions that we experience are a combination of these, right? So you could have that capacity for joy and interest, excitement combined for you to experience love. You know, that's a possibility. You could experience fear and interest, excitement, and that could be love as well in some weird, toxic way. But again, it's a combination, right? So, sorry, okay. Is are predisposed to reaction to the environment like fear, an evolutionary biological response. So what I said about you appraise the environment to identify whether it's harmless or dangerous, that appraisal is very much an adaptive biological response to help you survive. Okay. So beyond these basic emotions, right, now we've understood that this is how different people are looking at emotion. We have to interpret our emotion on some level, most emotions, right? So there are instinctive emotions that we don't process. It's a shortcut, we just feel them. But when we are experiencing emotion, whether it's a, let's say, a low road or a high road, or whether it's one of the 10 basic emotions or a combination of those basic emotions, we express emotion or emotional state through our face more than anything else. Okay, so you know how some people are really good liars and other people are not? It's about controlling your facial expression. The face is the most expressive part of your body. Sarah, I don't actually know the answer to your question, so I will have to look it up. It was something that I thought about when I was considering their theory, so I'm sorry, I don't know. But if you can email me, I'm happy to help you figure it out. So, all right, coming back here to where were we? Our faces. Our faces that either help us be better liars or don't help us be better liars. But related to that question is, how do you know that somebody is lying? How do you know when somebody is happy? How do you know when somebody is sad? You look at their face, yes? I used to teach this course on happiness as a state of mind. And as part of that course, I used to show students in the beginning these photos of different humans doing different things with just their faces. And I used to ask them, what do you think these people are experiencing? the entire class would have different answers. So if someone was smiling, some people in the class might say this person is anxious, this person is nervous, this person is, then others would say this person is happy, somebody else would say this person is feeling calm. The thing is that we are very poor at detecting emotion accurately in other people. We make a lot of mistakes. In the sense that if someone is sad and they're smiling and we don't know them, we're most likely just going to think they're happy, right? So it's difficult for us to accurately, obviously, read any emotional expression, but it's even harder for us to figure out how facial expression is not actually depicting the emotional reality. So it's hard for us to know which or when a smile is a fake smile in a nutshell, right? Or when, you know how you say crocodile tears, it's hard for us to know कि कौन actually किसके tears crocodile tears hai and who is actually sad and crying. It's hard. We are very bad at this, right? Which is why we are so easily manipulated by con men and con women and con people, right? So something to think about. Now, we still have to talk about stress, which is giving me stress, but it's 12:41 and I know you have namaz now. So I'll leave you with the last part of emotion, something I'm sure you can figure out on your own. And it's something we've talked about continuously throughout this class is that you have an autonomic nervous system, right? So you have a parasympathetic system and you have a sympathetic system uh, within the ANS, within the autonomic nervous system. So the just remember this, and this is related to when we talk about stress as well. The parasympathetic system is the one that calms you down. The sympathetic system is the one that brings you up. Okay, so sympathetic system is the one that creates more arousal, that stimulates you. The parasympathetic system is the calming system where everything starts to come back to homeostasis. Okay, so that is all for you, just to remember. In relation, of course, to what everything we've talked about the actual experience of emotion, whereby emotion is defined by psychological label plus bodily expression, behavior, plus physiological arousal. Okay, just remember that. 3 things. All right. Naval, yeah, we can totally do that. Let's so you guys are done, and I'll see you day after tomorrow. And we will be finishing stress, and I think we're starting personality theory, if I'm not wrong. So Naval, Abira, you both need to talk about everybody can start leaving the meeting. I'm not going to end the call. Just start leaving the meeting, please. Bye-bye. Have a nice, restful Sunday. Naval, you can wait, and bye, everyone. And Abira, you can also wait, and I'll tell you guys how to do this. Dafis. Okay, Sana, you can also wait. Yes, Iman, you can also wait. All right, so right, Hamna and Varia. Okay, Hamna is on the same group as Naval. Mariam Ibrahim Ahmed, I think you are asleep and not actually attending class. Safa and Fatma, I hope that you are listening to that. And Rukaya Marvi, sad but same. Laiba, can you leave as well, please? Okay, let's do this. I'm just gonna ask you, okay, are you uncomfortable asking any of the things you want to ask in the presence of other people?
Miss, we actually wanted to like discuss our research topic and like our methods with you.
That's fine. But my question is, are you okay to talk about it in front of other people?
I think we rather go last in private, if that's okay.
That's totally okay. Sharik, you go ahead and ask your question first.
I just wanted to ask, does everyone have to present? Because we have 10 members and like only 5 to 7 minutes to present.
Yeah,
Is it necessary?
how is this that you have 10 members?
I don't know.
Okay, can you?
It's the same for us as well. There are like 11 members.
What section are you guys?
50238, I think.
Okay, 1 second.
We are in 50239 and we also have like 10 members. So
I'm trying to, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't remember what the groups are, so I'm just opening it up. You'll have to wait. My laptop is like me now. It's old. Safa, you can go ahead and also leave the meeting. I've got this. It's not a problem. Sorry, you guys. It's still opening. This is what was happening in the morning as well. Okay. Yes. Right. Fine. Yeah. Cool. 5 groups. Cool. 5 groups. How much time do you have for your presentation?
I think 7 minutes.
I'm going to give you guys more time. Yeah, I think I did a mistake. I'm going to give you guys more time, but in a nutshell, let me quickly do some math, which is not my strongest suit, so be patient. I'm thinking that 5 groups, 10 minutes each is 50 minutes. Our class is 75 minutes, so each group can talk for 15 minutes. Why did it not occur to me? Damn, sorry. All right. So I'll post an official announcement about this as well. But take about 10 to 12 minutes to present your work, and then we'll have 3 minutes, 4 minutes for questions. Okay? So each group has total 15 minutes allotted. Right? It is not necessary for all group members to speak, but I would highly encourage all group members to, if not present, right, then at least answer the questions. I would really like for everyone to be involved in this process. And in the past, when I've given this assignment, people have gone ahead and done their own primary research and then presented those findings. Like they've implemented surveys with their class and stuff. And those have been really lovely presentations. But again, it's not something I demand or ask because it's a freshman course. But if you want to do that, absolutely. So Sharik, does that answer your question? Yes? Great. Thank you. So now you go. Right. Okay, so Varia, are you okay to ask me right now? Okay.
Okay, so as a makeup quiz, I submitted an assignment on your email, but I haven't gotten a response. So I just wanted to make sure that you have received it.
I have. I've also marked it.
Okay, but is it like available on LMS?
Yeah.
Score?
On this ERP, you should see the mark.
Okay, Okay. Okay, that's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Will you confirm, please? If you have not, let me know. Write to me on the same email, okay? Okay. All right. Bye. Okay. So you guys are left. Safa, are you here? Something weird is happening. Are you here? Hello, Safa. I'm sorry. Just give me 1 second. All right. Yes, Sarah.
Miss, I just wanted to ask if after we've done taking a stance on our theory, is it okay if we come to a conclusion, or do we have to like take a neutral stance?
Are you saying is it mandatory to have a neutral conclusion?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
The only thing that is mandatory is to pick a position.
Got it.
You have to have a research question in mind. Because research question ke baghair, you will not be able to really, let's say, focus your findings, right? So please feel free. You do not have to have a neutral conclusion, but it should be a balanced conclusion. There's a difference. Okay.
Got it.
All right. Sana.
Yes, I just wanted to inform you, like we have 10 people in our group and one of them has gone on a semester break, but he's still in our group. So his name is Mohammed Abdullah and he's in yeah, so we just wanted to make sure that you know about this. That's why I stayed.
Totally fine. It's always happens.
Okay, okay. That's it. So I'm gonna leave. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm
Okay,
sorry
so
to cut you off, but should I leave because I'm not part of their group and I want to talk about something?
Oh, you're not. Okay. Do you wanna do this privately? Because then you can just rejoin in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Miss, she can go ahead. Pehle, Abira, you can talk.
No, it's really long and it's not part of our course.
Acha. Chalo, okay, ठीक है.
Abira, just rejoin. It's 12:52. Why don't you rejoin at 12:55? Nawal, is 5 minutes okay for you guys? ठीक है.
Okay, so Miss, we just wanted to like go through a research question. So we decided to do it on personality psychology, and more specifically, we're going to focus on Jungian, like Carl Jung's typology. So his 8 personality types. Our research question is basically like a correlation between personality types and music tastes, and we wanted to run that through you in case there was like any issue with this topic, or if we should focus on something else. Other than that, we were also deciding to conduct primary research, but we wanted to ask you if, like, using the MBTI, like the Myers-Briggs temperament indicator, or like the Kiersey temperament sorter, both of them are based on Jungian typology, if whether those would be like a good idea, and if those are actually like we can use those. So yeah.
Okay. What you're saying is you're using the foundational theory of Carl Jung and his archetypes, number one. Number two, you're using that as a basis to understand human personality. Number three, you're making a case that human personality affects human preference and taste in music, correct? Okay. And you are saying that you want to do some primary research, and so should you use Jung inspired MBTI, or what was the second test you said?
I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's the Kiersey. I think it's the Kiersey indicator scale. it basically has the same function as the MBTI, but the MBTI is more feeling, and the QRC scale tests your behavior more.
And
That's what I found on the internet.
something we haven't directly spoken about in class, but I've mentioned a few times earlier, is also remember how when you listen to a particular song, it is, remember mood congruent memories, right? So when you're sad and you listen to sad music, you have more sad memories. And think about this, that let's say you're a person who is introverted. Okay, and I'll also be honest, because I don't really love Freudian or Jung, I don't see a lot of, it doesn't matter, forget about that. Okay, I really like the research question, and in answer to your query, MBTI is a more widely used, and it has been around for longer. It's easy because you can just get it done online by giving people a web link. People are always interested in taking a personality test, so that also works for you. I think what I would tell you is that how I'm interested in asking how are you going to relate the MBTI or the other wala? My vote is for MBTI. How would you relate that to your music question?
So we're focusing on different aspects. So one of our main aspects is, do people with perhaps the same personality type, do they share the same taste in music? Is it like a generalizable thing, or like is it like, do personality types only determine like an individual's preference, and everyone is different in what they like in music, or even if their personality type is the same? Another thing we're trying to focus on is, there's like this stereotypical notion of introverts being more quiet and unfeeling and reserved. So automatically one would think that they are more drawn to softer or sadder music that's more lighter in tone, whereas extroverts or those who are outgoing, they prefer uh, more upbeat or EDM punk rock type of music. I've experienced this in real life as well, where being more quiet and shyer, I've been like stereotyped as liking softer music when I actually like a lot of music. So we're going to look at that as well, and how these certain stereotypes can be broken down. Do you, does that does that, is that clear? Should I explain it again?
No, I got it. But I would caution you because it's sounding a lot like you're trying to establish cause instead of correlation. I just want to be clear, you're looking at a correlation, right?
Yes.
Looking at a correlation. Okay. You'll have to do some statistical analysis, and I'm not sure how much of that you know how to do.
So a lot of us had, I think it's called GP, Iman.
Yeah. So basically, in all of us, I had this subject, global perspectives. So it was basically, it had a lot of research, and we did carry out primary research. And I do know how to, I do have a hang on statistical analysis. But but we're going to do it on a very basic level. And also, if we use Google Docs, so automatically some of the analysis gets done. So that's going to be less work for us because we're not manually carrying out the research. So we're just sending out the Google documents, and people are going to fill them in, and then we can take out the results from there.
What's your sample size?
Yeah, so that's another thing that we wanted to discuss with you, because I think that for our purposes, because we don't have that much time, so our sample size shouldn't be that large. So I think maybe 30 to 50 should be fine.
Okay. Here's my recommendation. Please consider it in light of how much time you have. Okay. This is just my suggestion.
Right.
Because जो इस तरह की usually statistical modeling होती है, उसके अंदर you take your data, you code your data, you put it in Stata, you put it in SPSS, and you run it, and then you get p values के basis, मतलब statistically significant value के basis पे आप देखते हो कि ये correlation क्या है, positive है, negative है, कितनी significant है.
Yeah.
So I don't think you need to do any of that at this level. What you should do instead is take your get your form, your personality wala form filled out and the music wala form filled out, right? जैसे कि दो
Right.
components है.
Hmm.
करने के बाद उसमें देखो आपके personality में कितने सारे introverts, let's say in your sample 40% of the people are introverts, and you also see
Right.
in that 40% of introverts, 20% say they like all kinds of music, and remaining 80% say they like heavy metal.
Right.
Right? What you can do is, अगर आपके सैंपल 50 लोगों का है जिसमें से 30 लोग इंट्रोवर्ट हैं, 3 of those introverts tell you more about this preference in music, right? So for example, do they like it because it's something they grew up listening to? Do they like it because they are a musician themselves, right? So what, instead of doing all that complex quantitative analysis, you do a mixed method sort of approach where you take the numbers and then you try and explore them a little bit. Okay, and then I don't want you to code your findings or anything. You don't have time, you don't know how to do it. I barely know how to code, and I've been doing this for years. So you don't need to worry about that. But जरूर करना एक थोड़ा सा in-depth study, because that will give your findings at this level के correlation है. What does that look like, right? So you'll understand it's not just personality, obviously, that determines your taste in music. We know that there are other factors. So in this way, you can shed light on what those other factors are contingent on personality. And here's the thing. When you do these little mini informal interviews कर लो लोगों के साथ, अपने respondents के साथ, so you might also be able to sketch out that there is a similarity in preference for, let's say, classical music when people are trying to study. And that is something that appears to be, remember to use the right language, appears to be unrelated to personality type. It's something that is based on situation or environmental needs instead.
Right.
So that all I'm saying is this will give your data more complexity, and it won't be as.
So basically, the question is, yeah. So basically, the question is that we use, so we can actually create some of the questions instead of using the standardized ones, which are gonna, give us more insight into whether the preferences that people have are based on their personality or their other factors for it.
Do not modify the standardized scale if you are using one.
Right. Okay.
Okay, because when you are looking at the results, then wo aapki messed up ho jayengi. Don't do that. If the scales are standard, use them as they are, but in your little informal interviews, have a set of 5-10 questions that you are asking from all of those people. Those 5-10 questions mein, that's where you can put in these things that you're interested about. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
एक बड़े
Thank you so much.
ये करो, क्वांटिटेटिव इंस्ट्रूमेंट करो, सर्वे करो, और एक छोटे सैंपल के साथ थोड़ा सा क्वालिटेटिव वर्क कर लो.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Miss.
Welcome. I'm very excited.
Thank
It's
you.
interesting to me. Good luck.
Hafiz.
Hafiz.
Thank you.
Bye. Yes, Abira, are you here?
Yep.
All right.
Hello, Miss.
How are you?
I'm good. What about you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. So,
are you free?
Yeah.
Because like this might take a while.
How long is a while?
So, I don't know.
Okay, fine.
So, yeah. So I wanted to know, because I want to do psychology, my major in psychology, and I wanted to know more about the scope in psychology, like in Pakistan and generally around the world, and also what in psychology, like there's a lot of. So I also want to like have a career, and in not just study it and then leave it. So what's like best for having a career? Also, was it your choice to be a teacher? Because it was your choice to be a teacher. You chose to be a teacher.
Yes, I love
it.
it.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I love teaching, and nobody who doesn't love teaching should ever be
Okay.
allowed into a classroom. That's what I believe. But okay, so let me just tell you
Yeah.
that where you're at right now is going to continue to change, not just over the next 3.5 years at IBA, but beyond that as well. Okay, that's the first thing to remember.
Yeah.
Second thing is, okay, when you talk about psychology as a field of study, um, it's not something that I ever wanted to do, by the way. When I enrolled in my first
Oh.
psychology class at university, that's where I started to become interested in it. But I was very hesitant to make that commitment to it. So I explored it further and further through lots of different courses in the subject. And when I graduated from university, had predominantly studied development and psychology. Okay, because again, I didn't want to make a choice. I wanted to do both. Now, when we talk about applications of psychology, and the reason I told you this little bit about myself is because later on, in for many years, I did no work that was directly related to psychology. Right? I taught English general, and it's only when I started when I started working as a college counselor, that all my psychology training kicked in. And that's where I sort of almost like rediscovered my interest in the subject. And then I thought, and I, you know, experimented with the idea of being a therapist. And I said, no, that's not something I want to do. I want to do research. And because I'm so interested in psychology, and my interest in psychology is driven by, improving adolescent and children's well-being and mental health and protection from challenges, and particularly in the context of education, which is something I care deeply about. So that's been sort of my journey. I've taken many detours, many roads. All of them have led back to one area in psychology, which is human development. Okay. But for other people, it's been different. Where, for example, I think Dr. Sahar, who's the chair of social science, she has a specialization in sensation perception. And again, she does research. For instance, I teach you, but I also do my own research, right?
Yeah.
And that's what drives me. And because of my practical experience in education plus my psychology background, I am also very suited to doing consultancies and different types of projects. So it's a very diverse skill set, right? So sometimes I have projects where I'll do some training, I'll design some content, deliver it, whatever. Other projects I have are asking me to evaluate the effectiveness of different models, etc., etc. So, it's not like the psychology training comes into all of them, which is why
Okay.
I would tell you, okay, if you're interested in psychology, step one for you is to figure out which areas are most interesting to you, right? So,
Okay.
अभी तो आप बिल्कुल beginning पे हो. The good thing is that at IBA you will get the opportunity to take lots of different types of psychology courses. Social psychology hoga, abnormal psychology hoga, एजुकेशनल साइकोलॉजी होगा, जेंडर न्यूरो साइकोलॉजी होगा, बहुत सारे अलग सेंसेशन परसेप्शन भी आई थिंक एक कोर्स होता है. तो द अंडर ग्रेजुएट डिग्री गिव्स यू अ सेंस ऑफ व्हाट द होल फील्ड लुक्स लाइक. ओके, लेकिन दिस इज वेयर द कॉम्प्लिकेशन हैपन. If you want to do clinical psychology, that's a decision you need to make before you graduate. Because to do clinical psychology, you have to study psychology at undergrad. Okay, you have to. उसके बाद
Yeah,
उसके बाद
that's what I want. That's what I want to do, because like therapy and counseling sessions and that, but I've heard that people don't really get a job, and they're just like, they don't have a career, they just study it and they just get a degree, but they don't have a future. And also that after undergrad, people have to do like a 2-year course somewhere, or like a training session and then go to grad school. So I just don't know. There's a lot of things that I've heard and just want to confirm if all of that is true.
Okay.
And I also want to just don't do something that like that has no scope, like something that has no way to go, like move on and like grow.
All right. I have been telling students this for years. Scope is only partially determined by the environment. The rest of scope you can create. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as far as your question is concerned, I think you're getting confused between clinical psychology, which would mean the clinical practice of psychology, whereby the focus is on diagnosis and treatment, right?
Yeah.
Where diagnosis and treatment are both informed by medical lenses, right? Which is why in clinical psychology, you have to do a master's and a PhD to be a clinical psychologist. You don't get to do it without a PhD. ठीक है? जो आप काउंसलिंग साइकोलॉजी की बात करती हो तो उसके अंदर इफ यू ग्रेजुएट फ्रॉम योर अंडरग्रेड यू फिनिश द अंडरग्रेड यू गो टू अ मास्टर्स एंड देन you can either do a master's and then do some training, or you could just do the training and start practice. Okay, lekin honestly speaking, I cannot communicate enough the value of studying this subject at the master's level and then approaching that therapy training to become a counselor or a a talk therapist. Because the way that it's taught here, and I know there are 2 places here that provide this training. I have actually studied 1 year at one of them. It's really good. Okay, but it's not it's not as research based. Okay, it's very theoretical, absolutely, and they tell you कि ये theory है, let's say Carl Rogers की आप इसको इस तरह use करें, but they don't really present to you the research that underlies the theory. And the reason the research is so important to understand is because that allows you to really have a scientific inquiry into the theory, and that's missing from these programs. And that is a problem. That's a problem because it makes you a less effective practitioner. And it's also a problem because अगर आप सिर्फ ये कोर्स करते हो ना तो फिर आप सिर्फ थेरेपी कर सकते हो. But if you have a master's...
So what I meant was diagnosis and treatment.
Then clinical psychology.
Yeah.
Okay. Clinical psychology.
So I was confusing the 2. Okay.
Yeah. इस तरह की therapy में it's not the job is not to diagnose a disorder unless it's like literally in your face. So for example, I always say, if you're suffering from something like schizophrenia, talk therapy cannot help you. You need a clinical psychologist who will work with a psychiatrist to prescribe medication to you. Right? So ये आपकी 3 areas हैं. तो एक आपका हो गया talk therapy, which is broad, not a diagnostic thing. फिर आपका आता है क्या कहते हैं clinical psychology, where there is diagnosis and there is treatment through research-based, evidence-based strategies and approaches. And lastly, आपका आता है psychiatry, which is very much a part of medical school and medical training because it's concerned absolutely completely with the neuroscience aspect, right? And from, like you said, you're more interested in clinical psychology. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to look into master's programs in the area, you want to look into also PhD programs. And it's a long route. Phir question aata hai, what will you do with all of that? Right? So while you're doing your PhD, a big part of the PhD process is research. And clinical psychology mein, between the master's and PhD, if I'm not mistaken, you also have to do a residence or a fellowship of some kind. I might be wrong. Please do double check this. I'm not sure. But मेरे ख्याल से कुछ होता है. उसके बाद आप अपना PhD करते हो. तो Clinical psychology you can practice in a hospital setting. Okay, you can be a researcher and a teacher, like I do with my human development and educational psychology. But essentially, yeah, psychology के अंदर अगर आप practice नहीं कर रहे हो, फिर आप पढ़ा सकते हो और आप research कर सकते हो और आप interventions or programs design कर सकते हो that are related to improving mental health. Right, and so and what I'm trying to point out to you is there are lots of overlaps in these areas. Never think that if I'm doing this, but I'm only doing this. You know, like I feel like for me, I love teaching. You asked me this question, you're very surprised. I love teaching. I have always loved it. But if I ever am at a point in my life where I'm only teaching, I get very bored. I get very bored, and then I become a bad teacher by my own standards. Okay, because then it starts to feel like, I don't know, it's not challenging, you know, because there's nothing else in my mind that I can bring into the classroom, and then I'm just so limited to the textbook. I don't like to teach like that, as you might have noticed. But again, look, Abira, it's about, for me to be able to tell you these things and be able to know these things about myself, it's been let's see, 2004. This is 2021.
Yeah.
So 17 years it's taken me to get to this point where I know that, okay, you know, I want to do these things and I want to do them together at different times, simultaneously, whatever. But these are the things that I love the most. I love to write, I love to read, I love to investigate, I love to learn new things, I love to connect with people, I love to help people. So these are things that all fit into teaching and doing research and consulting, right? But it will take you time to figure out what your things are. Right? So if clinical is something you want to do, you go ahead and you...
Like, I'm not sure as yet. I'm not like confirmed.
Exactly. तो आपने करना ये कि आपने हर किस्म के psychology courses लेने.
Yeah.
Okay, and be open to the idea that you may realize you don't want to study psychology and you want to study social research instead. Right? Maybe you realize you don't want to study psychology, you want to study economics. Be open to that. Undergrad is for that. I was an economics major, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did you do your undergrad from?
LUMS.
Okay, cool.
So be open to the fact that it can shift, but as long as you always have a plan. Okay, don't just waft along aimlessly and think that life will just happen for you. You have to make things happen for you, and the things that happen for you are things that have to help you. Right? So there has to be intention behind all the choices you make.
Oh.
Okay, so no pressure, but yeah, that's what I would suggest. Abhi, just explore. Use your undergraduate degree to explore. That's the best advice I can give you. That's what I did. I have no regrets. I took courses on witchcraft, I took courses on religion, I took courses on literature, I took courses on colonialism and philosophy and psychology, you know. And the best part about social science or liberal arts, everything can be seen as interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the best part about it. Did I answer your question, or have I just given you a long lecture?
No, that clears a lot of things. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And I think that within the psychology faculty at IBA, go through the full-time lecturers. There are a few people who have PhDs. Perhaps you could ask Dr. Sahar for an appointment. You can talk to her a little more also. You know, she can give you insight into her journey. So just explore and learn and think through it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. My pleasure. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.